Welcome once again to Crazy Talks with Wise People. This is Mary Angela once again. We have a guest, brand new guest from California. Our guest is a PhD major, majoring in philosophy from the University of Oklahoma. I'm not going to tell you when. It will age him. He's still young.
Uh, it was 1997.
All right. Since that time, he has been teaching philosophy at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton, California. His books include Cynical Maxims and Marginalia, Meditations on Self-Discipline and Failure, Stoic Exercise for Mental Fitness, A Life Worth Living, Meditations on God, Death, and Stoicism. You Die at the End, Meditations on Mortality and the Human Condition, God Bless the Broken Bones, Meditations over One Botched, Bungled, and Beautiful Year, The Exile at Home, Meditations on the Passing Madness, American Exit, Your Personal Secession Manifesto, Fractured Observations, Notes on Odd Stuff from Coffee to Coffins, The Little Book of Mental Toughness, Endure What You Must, Accomplish What You Can, and Embrace the Struggle, and Slave and Sage, Remarks on the Stoic Handbook of Epictetus. You remind me of the Karamazov brothers. I already told you before we started with our podcast.
This will do it.
No, and also, the topics that you write in your books.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Well, one minor correction. I actually retired from teaching in 2022. Excuse me.
Mm.
Just at sort of at the end of the pandemic. So I'm actually
Mm.
no adult college, but still writing.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard him. William Ferraiolo. Thank you. Did I pronounce your surname well?
Pretty close. You did better than most. It was Ferraiolo. So
Ferraiolo. All right.
Ferraiolo.
Warm welcome to you. And we are
Well,
anticipating to listen to you. You are a very unique person. And we would like to learn about your philosophy, the morality and ethics and everything that you've been writing. These are kind of intellectual books, I suppose.
right. All the books that you mentioned are either works about Roman Stoicism, Stoic philosophy, or they're cultural observations. But
Mhm.
the new book coming out is my first novel, my first work of fiction.
Mm.
It's actually the first installment of a trilogy.
Mm.
Uh, so the new book is called The Ethical Assassin, a Vigilante's Memoir. But I'm really still writing about morality. I'm still writing about good and evil and struggling to figure out what is morally permissible and what is not. I'm just doing an environment of fiction, through speaking through my characters rather than speaking in my own voice.
Yeah, because storytelling is, well, according to some, storytelling is more powerful.
More powerful, and also you can be more playful with fiction
Yes.
than philosophy.
Yeah. Mm. So, what was the initial spark that made you write such a thought-provoking book that touches on critical topics such as morality and ethics? I'm referring to your than just the recent novel that you released.
Right. The story's been kicking around in my brain for a number of years. The catalyst was probably retirement and having enough free time to try and experiment a little bit with writing fiction. But what I always want to do is I always want to encourage my reader to consider difficult moral questions. Some moral questions are pretty simple and straightforward.
Mm,
If you're contemplating initiating a genocide, don't do that.
mm,
That
mm,
but other the questions that are not obvious, the questions with which we struggle, those have always been the ones that interest me the most. So I wanted to write a book about a protagonist who is trying to figure out whether the life that he is now leading after a catastrophe happens that causes him to lose everyone and everything he's ever really cared about, he has to find a new course of life, a new way of living.
Mm.
What he stumbles upon is creates a very difficult moral conundrum for him, or a series of difficult moral choices that he has to make. That's why it's called, the ethical assassin. Typically, we think, well, assassinating people, that can't be morally permissible, but
Yes.
the people that my protagonist kills are uncontroversially evil people, very evil people that he, in his judgment, deserve to die. He uses this expression over and over again. I only kill people who need killing. So,
Yeah, that's really a question between morality and ethics, right? Between
uh,
morality and ethics. Yeah. Like,
well,
mm,
uh, if morality refers to the objective facts about morality, and if
mm,
ethics refers to one's assessment of those facts, this
mm,
protagonist assessments of what is right and wrong, then yeah, I think that's the way you could phrase it, right?
yes.
Or
Um,
his
yes.
ethical code match the actual moral facts, or has he gone astray? Has his are his beliefs about ethics actually causing him to perform immoral deeds because his beliefs are
Mm, mm,
fouled up?
mm, mm, mm. I'm just wondering, how did the final version differ from the initial vision?
Let's see. The final version of this first book is a shorter story than I initially expected. I thought I was going to write one book about this character.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to break it into three different books. You put all three books together, and it would be something like 500 or 600 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I took just the part of the story, the narrative that introduces this character, the catastrophe in his life, and his stumbling onto a new conception of a new way of living his life, finding a new purpose. And I just turned that into book one. So this
Mm-hmm.
first book is only about 45,000 words. It comes out to about 140 pages. It's relatively short.
Mm-hmm.
Installment is about twice that long, and the third installment is somewhere in between. So one way that the final product diverged from my initial conception is it turned into three books rather than one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So
Mhm.
it's more of a sequel now.
Well, this is the first installment, and then there will
This is the
be
first sequel, and then they come up with second. Oh, it's like the Lord of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings. It's you
not
know,
not
uh,
Lord
it
of the Rings.
it
And so
yeah
some people tell me that I look like I stumbled out of the Lord of the Rings, with this beard.
yeah. That's why it was easy for me to recall this Lord of the Rings sequel because of your, how you looked.
Yeah, this is my gift nation right here. A
Mm,
decent dwarf.
okay. Yeah, well, that's your self-expression and you look good with it.
Well, thank you.
And yeah, that's actually how we stereotype philosophers in,
Uh, I,
bearded ones.
really, I just have it because my wife likes it.
Okay, I thought it was like your packaging being a philosopher.
Well, I guess I have to look the part too.
Hmm. Okay, can you tell us more, an in-depth synopsis of your book and where can they find your book?
The book has not released just yet. It releases at the end of this month, April 29th. And
Ah,
people can purchase it at the usual outlets. Amazon, of course, has taken over the world. So
mm-hmm,
we'll get it from Amazon, but
mm-hmm,
it's also available from Barnes and Noble. People in the UK can buy it directly from the publisher. The publisher is Collective Ink Publishing.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Roundfire Books is the imprint
mm-hmm.
under which one's being published, and there are some other smaller outlets out there. You can get it pretty much anywhere books are sold.
What's the title of the book again?
The Ethical Assassin,
The Ethical Assassin,
a vigilante's memoir.
a Vigilante's Memoir.
Right, and I don't have a physical copy yet. I haven't gotten it from the publisher yet, so I'd like to be able to hold it up and show it to you, but I don't have
Sounds
one.
like a thriller. Sounds like
Uh,
a thriller movie.
it's a psychological thriller. I hope it'll
Mm,
be. That would be great.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, calls I'll definitely answer. Did you want a brief synopsis of the plot?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, a few chapters in, I hold off on letting the reader know this. A few chapters in, the reader learns how this protagonist, who has no name, it's presented as a journal written by the ethical assassin himself, a journal that was found and sent to a publisher.
Uh-huh.
A few chapters in, you learn that he lost his entire family in one fell swoop, in
Mm-hmm.
one gigantic catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
And since his family was all he ever cared about or ever valued, it was
Mm-hmm.
the only reason for him to, have a job and work and earn money and so on.
Mm-hmm.
He is just sort of bereft of purpose, bereft of any meaning in his life until, well, he kind of goes to drown his sorrows at the bar, and he overhears a guy at the bar bragging to a drinking buddy of his about how he beats the hell out of his wife and children to keep them in line. And so my protagonist thinks, I just buried my wife and children who meant everything to me. I loved them dearly. And here's this guy bragging about how he beats and tortures his wife and children. And he decides, I'm going to kill this man. And he listens to enough of this conversation without letting on that he's overhearing what they're saying. He listens to enough of the conversation to gather information about where to find this guy the next day, where he's going to be, and he realizes he's going to be in a place where there will be no witnesses, probably.
Mm-hmm.
He decides, I'm going to kill him, and he does, and then he has to assess whether what he has just done is or is not morally permissible, whether God would or would not approve of what he's done. He's a believer; he believes in God,
Mm-hmm.
and he struggles with this throughout the book. He can't decide. There are a couple of chapters in which he cites passages from the Bible that seem to support the idea that there are certain people um, who must be killed, quote, by the hand of man, as the Bible puts it. Like God orders, at least one could interpret the text as saying God has ordered us to dispatch certain people who commit certain kinds of sins, to kill them. And he reads those passages, thinks, okay, this is the kind of person that God wants eradicated from His creation. But then, of course, there are all sorts of other passages that forbid murder and forbid seeking vengeance and things like that. So he struggles with this throughout the entire three books, but the first book in particular, he's really struggling in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's sort of the introduction to what gets him started. Ultimately, he starts choosing other victims. For example, he
All
chooses
right.
one.
Okay, okay. I
Okay,
think that's a very good teaser already. It's a
okay,
very good teaser. You have to buy the book and read it,
right.
my friends. We need to buy the book and read that. It looks like a very interesting book.
Uh,
Um, yeah, it looks like a very interesting book. And okay. Um, what was the most surprising thing you learned while writing this book?
I think I was surprised at um, how smooth the transition was from writing philosophy to writing fiction. I have attempted to write fiction before when I was younger, but it always came out as kind of watered down philosophy. I never liked anything that any novel that I ever started. I always aborted it and gave up on it. But I was younger then. I was in my 20s and my 30s. I'm 56 years old now, and I think um, something about the aging process, something about probably something about retiring and having more time on my hands to play with. I was surprised at um, how easy it was to write the book. Not that it was easy, but it was easier than I expected it to be. So that's one surprise, more about myself than about the book or the characters or the narrative. Excuse me, I have some allergies or acting up. Sorry.
Mhm. Did you internalize the character while you were writing it?
Uh,
Like the characterization?
I think I have to in order to bring any character to life on the page, in order to make the character plausible,
Mm,
something you could imagine existing in reality. I have to find facets of myself and imbue the character with those. Now, they become exaggerated. Like I've never actually killed anybody.
of course. Yes, yes, yes,
I'll
yes, yes.
get that. But uh, I could imagine myself, given the right circumstances, maybe
Mm,
if I lost my wife and our kids and everything that mattered to me,
mm,
I
mm,
myself potentially descending into this mindset of thinking, well, I've got nothing to lose, and there are people who, who deserve punishment. I could imagine becoming that kind of person. So I think my protagonist he is what I would be if I were, um if I lost everything, if I if I no longer cared about any consequences, and if I were having a really, really, really bad day for the rest of my life.
mm,
That's
mm,
I could imagine it.
mm. Okay. What was the most challenging part,
The most challenging part
of,
was
of writing this book?
right. I would say the most challenging part was constructing a plausible narrative arc. I had to get this guy from being an average workaday, uh, sort of nobody in particular, nobody special, to
Mm,
I had to transform him into this sort of dark, almost superhero like figure. Well, superhero is wrong. He
mm,
doesn't have
mm,
special
mm,
powers, but I had to transform him into a kind of a dark anti-hero sort of a character, and I
mm,
had to maintain that while he's continuing to struggle with questions of good and evil.
mm,
Not easy to do because you think once the guy goes dark, you might think, well, he no longer cares about morality. He's essentially said,
mm, mm,
good and evil be damned. I'm just gonna do what I want to do. But this
mm,
character can't get there. He he actually says at one point, I wish I were a sociopath because then I wouldn't have a conscience to bother me. But he's not
mm,
a sociopath, and his conscience does bother him. So keeping that struggle going, keeping it fresh, keeping it interesting, that was the greatest challenge.
mm. Um, what was the scene?
um, Probably I guess I'd have to go with his first murder, and he does speak at length about how he's not sure that this actually counts as murder in the moral sense. Legally, it's definitely murder. He knows that, but if a person deserves to die, he's trying to convince himself it's not murder to kill a person who deserves to die. But getting him from the funeral, right?
Mm,
Before his family dies, he's just this guy who works at a company. He doesn't say where he works or even the industry in which he works because he
mm,
has to remain anonymous. He doesn't want to get caught.
mm,
But he says, if you think of an insurance company, it's kind of like that.
mm,
But imagine a guy sitting behind a desk, pushing a pencil, working for something like an insurance company,
mm,
becoming a man who regularly hunts and kills people like pedophiles and sex traffickers,
mm, mm,
murderers and rapists
mm,
and people of that nature.
mm,
That transformation, that first kill scene, psychologically,
mm,
getting the character there psychologically, I think was the at least the first hurdle, if not the biggest hurdle.
mm, mm. Ah, okay. You're building up the excitement. I hope you guys will find the book also exciting. I'm finding it exciting as I speak with the author.
Oh,
Um, um, what do you want to convey to the world through your book?
I always write about good and evil. I always write about morality.
Mm,
Whether I'm writing about Stoicism and Stoic conceptions of morality, Stoic ethics, or whether I'm writing fiction, I I want to convince people that moral questions are the most important questions that we face, the most
mm,
important issues
mm,
that
mm,
we spend a lot of time thinking about how to make money and how to pay the bills, and of course
mm,
we about practical things. Right?
mm,
We need to survive, but if we're making money in an immoral fashion, or if we're
mm,
meeting our needs in an immoral fashion, I would argue that we are failing. So I want to get people to look at an extreme case of a moral conundrum or uh, a character who is struggling with life or death issues, and I
Mhm.
want to realize, even if you're not facing the question of whether to kill someone, or you're not facing your own life or death, your own mortality, you are every day facing questions that are tinged with morality, that touch on moral questions, questions about how to spend limited time and resources, and um, questions about what kind of character you want to develop for yourself, what kind of person you want
Mhm.
to be, what kind of person you should want to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I don't give them answers. I just prod them to ask questions and
And
pursue
that
them.
and that's the best way to teach people, make them think
I think
and
so. I
encourage
never,
them. Mm.
when I was teaching, I never told my students what I believed about any of the questions, any of the issues we were studying. Like if we were studying abortion, for example, I would
Mm.
show them pro-life argument and objections, a pro-choice argument and objections, a moderate position and objections. And I
Mm.
say, all right, here, you've seen all the arguments, all the objections. Now you decide what you think about this issue. I would never tell them what my position was.
Yeah. The best teachers are those who don't influence their students
I think
follow
so.
their position. They just make their students think and make their students decide.
Right. I
Mm.
always said I don't get paid to indoctrinate anybody. So
Mm.
I always tried to avoid doing that.
Mm. Perfect. Well, I like your position as well. If your book was a food, what would it be?
Oh, that's kind of a synesthesia question. I guess my book would be a steak cooked rare.
I love it. Okay. Oh,
The first time you cut into it, some of that blood and juice spills out. I think that's a good metaphor.
mhm. But it's delicious,
I hope so.
especially when you savor the beefy flavor.
Right. I
Yeah.
hope people come back for a second and third helping. I hope they
Mm.
buy the second installment.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And maybe you would like to bring this to, well, Hollywood is already burned, but you know, it's but maybe you can offer this as one of Hollywood movies. Why not?
Well, if there are any producers out there watching this podcast, give me a call. I will answer. We'll talk about it. I think it'd make a great movie.
Maybe you can write a little bit of a twist to that. I have an organization for women, and we are planning to do some film festivals,
Uh,
and that would be a very good story. But just do a little bit of a twist. Maybe make your protagonist a female because it's ours is a female group.
I don't know. I don't know if that was some of these cases. But once you get into the second and third book, you see why that might be a bit of a dilemma. My protagonist, for example, refuses to kill women because he can't bear to be part of violence against women. He only kills evil.
Oh, all right. That might be a very good project for us.
Maybe.
So tell us, why should we read your book?
Well, first of all, I need the money.
Okay.
No, first of all, I like to believe that it's well written and it's an interesting story and it'll pull you in. I've gotten some pretty good reviews so far. But if you've ever seen a person, encountered a person, read about a person, and thought that person does not deserve to live any longer, it could be Hitler, it could be Stalin, it could
Mm,
be, you
mm,
know, Epstein, it could be.
mm, mm,
Think of someone that you could at least plausibly get yourself to consider
mm,
that that person deserves to die.
mm,
Uh, Ask, would you like to read a story about a character who acts on that conclusion? A character who concludes this person deserves to die, and I'm going to make sure that happens. If the legal system hasn't gotten this one, I'm going to get him.
mm,
In cases in which the reader, I suspect, at least half of the readers will agree, yeah, that guy deserves to die.
mhm,
And he kills him in different ways. He uses some interesting murder weapons that you may not have seen used before. Sometimes he uses his bare hands. He uses a tire thumper. Most people don't know what a tire thumper is. Long haul truckers who drive 18 wheelers, they use this implement to thump their tires to see if they're inflated properly. But it's a
Mm.
really thick, solid piece of wood, and he he uses it in the way you might expect on things like skulls.
Okay. Does your book have an open-ended ending?
Yes, it does. Well, it has to because it's the first part of a trilogy. So at the end
Ah.
at the
Mm.
end of the book, he's writing this all down in a journal, in a handwritten leather-bound journal. At the end of the book, he's at a diner having breakfast, and he leaves the waitress an especially generous tip to make sure that she takes note of this, and he
Mm.
leaves the tip inside the journal, sticking out of the journal. He leaves the journal there and walks away. And then she finds this journal, reads it, looks through it, and decides she'd better get it to the authorities because she reads about this guy killing people, and it eventually gets published. There's an editor's note at the beginning of the book explaining how the book came into being and explaining, look, we don't know who this author is. We don't know if this is a true story or not, but
Mm.
be on the lookout. If any of this is familiar to you, please alert your local authorities. So
Mm.
that's how the book comes into being.
Okay. Thank you very much for spending time with us.
Oh, sure.
And thank you for sharing your book with us today. I mean, partially the synopsis, and it gave us a better be- better it will leave us a better judgment, before we read your book. And I think your book is very interesting. I like the way you look. You remind me of Karamazov brothers. You remind me of Plato. You remind me of the philosophers of the past who had shaped the way we think during this age. And
Keep
yeah, so thank you so
having me.
much for your time. Is there anything else that you would like to tell our viewers? And please don't forget to send me the link where we could find that book. And I think it's very interesting. I love to read philosophical novels and philosophical stuff. So I'll be one of your fans from now on.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I will send you the link. And if anybody wants to read my other books, this is my 15th book. The others are nonfiction. Just
Mhm.
go to Amazon.com and type in my name, and it's William, the normal spelling of William. My
Yeah.
last name's a little strange, so I'll spell it for your viewers. It's spelled F as in Frank, Erraiolo, and
Here,
just
look, it's here, Bferraiolo, right?
the B is just
Here,
my first.
here.
My last name is Ferraiolo, and if they just follow me, just
Mm.
hit the follow button. It doesn't cost anything. If they
Yeah.
hit the follow button, every time I have a new book coming out, there'll be.
Mm.
And I think I have another book coming out this September that's not related to this Ethical Assassin trilogy. And there's an entirely separate post-apocalyptic novel. So
Mm.
uh, follow me. You'll be alerted to all my new works coming out.
That's interesting. Yes, we will. We will do that. Kindly give me the link, and I'm going to put it down below so that they can follow whatever it is that you would like to offer them. And I'm sure what you're offering to everybody is, well, just a caution. I think if you're not an intellectual, don't buy his book.
Well, hey, don't say that. You can buy my whether you're smart. Okay.
Mhm. No, because I know, the nature of, like philosophical books, it needs a lot of masticating, intellectual mastication, and in intellectual introspection, and a lot of juxtaposing, values and virtues, and laws, and many other stuff. And if you don't have, I'm not sure, but yeah, for me, I read that way. Like I
Okay. I
yes.
my work's just accessible to the general public. So hopefully there's not too much, abstruse terminology or anything like that in the books.
Mhm.
Anyway, people should try one out and see if you
You
want
were
to read.
you were a university student, so maybe even university students can understand. Well, I
Oh,
started reading Karamazov Brothers when I was in high school, and it was interesting to me. So yours must also be, I think, understandable by even high school students.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. I try to make it that way.
Mm. Yes. Okay. So don't forget, or always remember to purchase his book. The title of your book again, please.
The Ethical Assassin, a Vigilante's Memoir.
There you go. Thank you
Okay.
so much,
Thank you.
William, for YOLO.
Yes, that's the, thanks a lot for having me. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. All right. Thank you so much, too, for watching Crazy Talks with Wise People. Here's another crazy but wise person that we've just interviewed. Okay. Bye for now. Bye, sir. Bye,
Bye.
William. Bye bye.
Okay. Everything.
Bye bye.